They called it a private club. It was something else. Chapter 1, The Invitation. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped beneath the door of Maya Castellano's apartment while she was still asleep. It was the kind of paper that announced its own importance, thick, cream-colored, with a weight that suggested consequence. No return address. Just her name, written in fountain pen across the front in letters so precise they might have been printed. Maya found it when she stumbled out of her bedroom at 6:30, bleary-eyed and reaching for the coffee maker. The envelope lay there on the hardwood floor, catching the early light that filtered through the curtains. For a moment, she simply stared at it, her hand frozen on the kitchen counter. In 3 years of living in this building, nothing had ever been delivered that way. The mail came through slots. Packages were left with the doorman. This felt different. Deliberate. She picked it up, felt its thickness between her fingers, and carried it to the small table by the window where she ate her meals alone. The seal on the back was wax, actual red wax, pressed with some kind of insignia she couldn't quite make out. A circle within a circle. Something that might have been wings, or waves, or simply an abstract design meant to convey exclusivity. Maya set it down and made her coffee first. She had learned, over the years, not to rush toward things that made her uneasy. Better to establish your ground, to settle yourself, before opening doors you might not be able to close again. The coffee machine gurgled and hissed. Outside her window, the city was beginning its daily resurrection, cars honking in the distance, the metallic screech of a delivery truck backing up, voices rising from the sidewalk 4 stories below. She was 31 years old, a senior analyst at a mid-tier consulting firm that specialized in financial compliance. Her job was to find the places where money moved in ways it shouldn't, to trace the invisible threads that connected legitimate businesses to less legitimate practices. She was good at it. Good enough that she'd been headhunted twice in the past year, though she'd turned both offers down. There was something satisfying about the work itself, about the puzzle of it, that mattered more than the marginal increase in salary. Her life was orderly. Controlled. She woke at the same time each day, ran the same route through the park 3 mornings a week, ate lunch at her desk while reviewing spreadsheets that would have put most people to sleep. She had few close friends, her college roommate Sarah, who texted occasionally from Seattle, a couple of colleagues she'd get drinks with once a month. Her last relationship had ended 2 years ago, amicably enough, both of them acknowledging that they'd been filling time rather than building something real. She liked her life this way. Predictable. Manageable. Free from the chaos that had defined her childhood, when her father's gambling addiction had moved the family from apartment to apartment, city to city, always one step ahead of debt collectors and broken promises. Maya took her coffee back to the table and sat down. The envelope seemed to watch her. She picked it up again, broke the seal with her thumbnail, and pulled out a single card, heavy as a playing card, printed with the same careful attention as the envelope. You are invited to join the Laureate Society. An exclusive community of accomplished professionals. Membership by nomination only. Your presence is requested at an introductory gathering. Thursday, 8 p.m. The Ashford Building, Penthouse. 1447, Meridian Avenue. Below that, in smaller text, dress, business formal. Confidentiality expected. That was all. No explanation of who had nominated her. No description of what the society actually did. No RSVP information, as if her attendance were simply assumed. Maya read it 3 times, her analytical mind immediately cataloging questions. Who were they? How had they gotten her name? What did accomplished professionals actually mean, and what did they want from her? She pulled out her phone and searched for Laureate Society. Nothing came up except references to various academic honor societies and a defunct literary group from the 1960s. She tried Ashford Building, Meridian Avenue, and found it easily enough, a luxury residential tower in the financial district, the kind of place where apartments started at $3 million and doormen wore white gloves. The penthouse. Of course. She should throw it away. Every instinct told her that. Anonymous invitations to exclusive clubs in expensive buildings were not how legitimate organizations operated. This had all the hallmarks of something questionable at best, dangerous at worst. And yet, Maya set the card down and stared out the window, watching the morning light spread across the buildings opposite hers. There was a part of her, the same part that had chosen a career hunting for hidden truths, that wanted to know. That needed to understand what this was, who was behind it, and why they'd chosen her. She had 2 days to decide. Chapter 2, The Threshold. Maya stood across the street from the Ashford building at 7:45 on Thursday evening, watching well-dressed figures disappear through its gleaming entrance. She'd told herself all week she wouldn't come. Then she'd told herself she'd come but only to observe from a distance. Now here she was, wearing her best navy suit, the invitation folded in her clutch, her heart beating faster than it had any right to. The building rose 43 stories into the darkening sky, its glass facade reflecting the city's lights back at itself like a mirror refusing to reveal what lay within. A doorman in burgundy livery stood at attention beneath an awning that stretched to the curb. Maya watched as a woman in a black evening dress emerged from a town car and walked inside without breaking stride, as if she'd done this 100 times before. Maya crossed the street. The doorman nodded as she approached, his face professionally neutral. "Good evening, miss." "Name?" "Maya Castellano." He consulted a tablet, scrolling with one gloved finger. "Found her name." Nodded again. "Penthouse level. The elevator on the far right. You'll need this." He handed her a key card, black and unmarked. "It only works tonight. Return it when you leave." "Thank you." Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. The lobby was all white marble and indirect lighting, arranged to suggest wealth without announcing it. A few residents crossed through, barely glancing at her. The elevator bank was empty. Maya pressed the call button for the rightmost elevator and waited, watching her reflection in the polished doors. She looked calm. Professional. Like someone who attended mysterious gatherings in penthouses all the time. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Inside, there was no panel of numbered buttons, only a card reader and a single button marked P. She swiped the key card and felt the elevator begin its ascent, smooth and nearly silent. 43 floors. Maya counted her breaths, trying to steady the mix of curiosity and unease that had been building since Tuesday morning. She'd done her research, spent hours searching for any mention of the Laureate Society, any connection to her name or work. Nothing. She'd asked careful questions around the office, wondering if anyone else had received similar invitations. Blank stares and polite confusion. Whatever this was, it had sought her specifically. The question was why. The elevator slowed. Stopped. The doors opened onto a private foyer, small and elegant, with a single doorway ahead. Through it, Maya could hear the low murmur of conversation, the delicate clink of glasses. She stepped out. The elevator doors closed behind her with a finality that made her skin prickle. A woman appeared in the doorway, mid-40s, blonde hair swept into an immaculate chignon, wearing a wine-colored dress that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Her smile was practiced but not quite warm. "Ms. Castellano. Welcome. I'm Victoria Hennessy. Please, come in." She stepped aside, gesturing into the space beyond. Maya walked forward and entered a world that didn't quite match the one she'd left below. The penthouse was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city spreading out in all directions like a carpet of light. But it was the people that made her pause. 30, maybe 40 individuals scattered throughout the open space, clustered in small groups, drinks in hand. They looked successful in that particular way that came from old money rather than new achievement, confident postures, expensive watches, the kind of casual elegance that suggested they'd never had to try very hard at anything. And they were all watching her. Not obviously. Not all at once. But Maya felt the weight of their attention, the subtle turning of heads, the way conversations paused for just a fraction of a second as she stepped inside. She'd walked into rooms full of strangers before, conferences, client meetings, networking events. This felt different. This felt like an audition. Victoria touched her elbow gently. "Can I get you something to drink? We have an excellent selection. White wine, please." Maya kept her voice level, her expression neutral. Whatever game this was, she wouldn't play it from a position of visible uncertainty. "Of course. Make yourself comfortable. Mingle. We'll begin shortly." Victoria glided away toward a bar set up along the far wall, leaving Maya standing alone at the edge of the gathering. A man detached himself from a nearby group and approached. Late 50s, silver hair, tailored suit that fit like it had been sewn directly onto his body. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "First time?" he asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. Maya met his gaze. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those of us who remember our own first night." He extended his hand. "Richard Crane. Welcome to the Laureate Society. I think you're going to find this very interesting." Chapter 3, Behind the Curtain. The presentation began at 8:30, after everyone had been sufficiently lubricated with wine and small talk. Victoria Hennessy moved to the center of the room, and the conversations died away as if someone had turned down a dial. Maya noticed how quickly it happened, how everyone's attention snapped to focus without being asked. These people were trained, she realized. Conditioned. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Victoria began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "For our new guests, welcome. For our existing members, thank you for your continued discretion and commitment. The Laureate Society exists because certain individuals recognize that the world operates on multiple levels, and that access to those deeper levels requires both qualification and trust." Maya stood near the windows, her wine glass barely touched. Richard Crane had drifted away after introducing her to two other new attendees, a surgeon named Dr. Patricia Voss and a tech entrepreneur called Marcus something or other. All three of them wore the same expression of guarded curiosity, trying to decode what exactly they'd walked into. "We are professionals," Victoria continued, "operating in fields where information is currency, where access means opportunity, and where the usual constraints can become obstacles to achieving what we deserve. The Laureate Society provides a framework for bypassing those obstacles. Legally, of course. But creatively." A ripple of knowing laughter moved through the established members. Maya's stomach tightened. Victoria smiled, letting the moment settle. "Let me be direct, because ambiguity serves no one. We are a private network that facilitates what I call strategic advantage trading. Our members have access to information, influence, and resources across multiple sectors: finance, healthcare, technology, real estate, government contracting, regulatory bodies. When used correctly, these assets can create opportunities that would otherwise remain invisible." Maya felt her professional instincts kick in, the same ones that flagged irregularities in financial reports. This was insider trading. Or something very close to it. Dressed up in sophisticated language and expensive wine, but fundamentally the same thing she spent her days hunting down and exposing. "I know what some of you are thinking," Victoria said, her eyes scanning the new faces in the room. "You're thinking about regulations. About oversight. About the lines we're taught not to cross." She paused, letting the tension build. "Those lines exist to protect the system from people who might abuse it recklessly. We are not reckless. We are careful. We are selective. And most importantly, we protect each other." A woman near the bar spoke up, one of the established members. Maya guessed from her comfortable posture. "Tell them about the insurance policy, Victoria." Victoria's smile widened. "Ah, yes. Our most important feature. The Laureate Society operates on a principle of mutual assured discretion. Every member provides, upon joining, a detailed disclosure of their participation. This document is held in escrow by our legal administrator, encrypted and secure. If any member violates our confidentiality agreement, if anyone considers reporting our activities to authorities or discussing our business outside these walls, all disclosures are simultaneously released to regulatory bodies. Maya felt the room tilt slightly. "You're describing a conspiracy," she said quietly, but in the sudden silence, her voice carried. Victoria turned to her, and for the first time that evening, her expression showed something genuine, a kind of predatory satisfaction. "I'm describing mutual benefit with appropriate safeguards, Ms. Castellano. You work in financial compliance. You know better than most how the system actually functions. How many violations go unpunished because the right people make the right calls? How many regulations exist primarily to create the appearance of oversight while the actual game continues underneath? That doesn't make it legal," Maya countered. "Legal is a spectrum, not a binary," Richard Crane interjected from across the room. "We operate in the spaces where interpretation matters more than statute. Where relationships trump regulations. You've seen it yourself, haven't you? In your work. The files that get buried, the investigations that mysteriously lose funding, the executives who walk away with golden parachutes while their companies pay negligible fines." Maya had seen it. More times than she wanted to admit. Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. "We're not asking you to become someone you're not, Ms. Castellano. We're offering you the chance to benefit from a system you already understand is broken. You can continue fighting against it from the outside, earning your modest salary and watching the real players dance around you. Or you can step inside and claim what you're worth." She held out a tablet, its screen glowing softly. "The membership agreement. Read it carefully. You have until midnight to decide." Maya took it, her hands steady despite everything. Around her, the party resumed, conversations flowing again as if nothing significant had happened. But everything had changed. She finally understood what the invitation had really been. Not an honor. A recruitment. And possibly a trap. Chapter 4, The Choice and Its Consequences. Maya left the penthouse at 9:15 without signing anything, the tablet's offer still glowing in her memory like a brand. She told Victoria she needed time to think, watched the woman's smile tighten imperceptibly at the edges, and walked back to that silent elevator with her heart hammering against her ribs. In the lobby, she returned the key card to the doorman, who accepted it without comment, and stepped out into the night air feeling like she'd just surfaced from deep water. She didn't go home. Couldn't. Not yet. Instead, she walked, letting the city's noise and movement wash over her, trying to process what she'd witnessed. The streets were still busy, couples heading to late dinners, groups of young professionals spilling out of bars, a homeless man asking for change near a subway entrance. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that 43 floors above them, a roomful of professionals were casually discussing how to manipulate systems that were supposed to protect them all. Maya found herself at an all-night diner near her office, sliding into a corner booth with a view of the street. A tired waitress brought coffee without being asked. Maya wrapped her hands around the cup and stared at nothing, her mind racing through calculations she didn't want to be making. The truth was, Victoria had been right about one thing. Maya had seen it, over and over in her work. The system was already corrupted. She'd traced money through shell corporations that disappeared into offshore accounts. She'd documented insider trades that regulatory bodies declined to prosecute. She'd watched executives lie under oath and walk away with barely a slap on the wrist because they had the right lawyers, the right connections, the right friends in the right positions. Her own father had been destroyed by debt he couldn't manage, hounded by collectors who followed every letter of the law. Meanwhile, the people who'd created the predatory lending structures that trapped him faced no consequences at all. They'd probably been members of clubs just like the Laureate Society, protecting each other while people like her father drowned. So why shouldn't she take what Victoria offered? Why shouldn't she step inside and claim some of that protected space for herself? Because it was wrong. The answer came automatically, reflexively, rooted in something deeper than logic. Because becoming part of the corruption didn't fix it. Because someone had to believe that the lines still mattered, even if they were constantly being redrawn. Maya pulled out her phone. Stared at it for a long moment. Then she opened her contacts and scrolled to a name she hadn't called in over a year, James Rodriguez, senior investigator at the Securities and Exchange Commission. They'd worked together on a case 2 years ago, developed a mutual respect built on late nights and shared frustration with how rarely their work resulted in actual accountability. Her thumb hovered over his name. Once she made this call, there would be no going back. The Laureate Society would know she'd betrayed them. The mutual assured destruction Victoria had described so confidently would target her too. They'd claim she'd been complicit, drag her name through whatever process they could engineer. Even if she was cleared eventually, the accusation alone might destroy her career. But if she didn't call, if she just went home and pretended this hadn't happened, she became complicit anyway. Silence was permission. Inaction was endorsement. Maya pressed the call button. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. Rodriguez. James, it's Maya Castellano. I'm sorry to call so late, but I need to meet with you. Tonight if possible. Tomorrow morning at the latest. A pause. She heard sheets rustling, could picture him sitting up in bed. Maya. What's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine. But I've stumbled onto something, and I think it's significant. I think it's exactly the kind of thing you've been looking for. Another pause, longer this time. When James spoke again, his voice had sharpened with the tone of someone fully awake. Where are you? Pete's Diner on 7th Avenue. Give me 40 minutes. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't call anyone else. And Maya? If this is what I think it might be, you need to be very careful until we can get you protected. The call ended. Maya set her phone down and realized her hands were shaking. Protected. The word carried implications she hadn't fully considered. Protection meant danger. Meant threat. Meant she'd just made herself a target for people with resources she couldn't begin to match. The waitress returned, refilled her coffee, gave her a look that suggested she'd seen plenty of people sitting in corner booths at night, wrestling with decisions they couldn't unmake. Maya thanked her and went back to staring at the street outside. 38 minutes later, James Rodriguez slid into the booth across from her. He looked rumpled, hastily dressed, but his eyes were alert and focused. He didn't order anything, just leaned forward with his hands clasped on the table. Tell me everything, he said. So she did. The invitation. The penthouse. Victoria Hennessy's presentation. The membership agreement she'd refused to sign. The mutual assured destruction policy designed to keep everyone locked into silence. The names she could remember, Richard Crane, Dr. Patricia Voss, Marcus whoever he was. The location. The time. Every detail she could recall. James listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each piece of information. When she finished, he sat back and exhaled slowly. Do you still have the invitation? Maya pulled it from her clutch and slid it across the table. James examined it carefully, pulled out his phone, and photographed it from multiple angles. This is big, Maya. Potentially massive. If even half of what you're describing is true, we're looking at a coordinated insider trading network that crosses multiple sectors. But here's what you need to understand, these people aren't amateurs. If they've been operating long enough to have developed a system this sophisticated, they have contingencies. They have lawyers. They probably have people inside regulatory agencies too, which means we need to be extremely strategic about how we handle this. What do I do? Right now? You go home. You act like you're still considering their offer. If they contact you, you stay non-committal but don't refuse outright. Buy us time to investigate, to identify members, to build a case that's airtight before we move. He met her eyes. Can you do that? Can you pretend you're still on the fence? Maya thought about Victoria's predatory smile. Richard Crane's knowing eyes. The casual way they discussed circumventing the laws she'd spent her career trying to uphold. Yes, she said. I can do that. But even as she spoke, she wondered if it was true. And she wondered what price she'd ultimately pay for the choice she'd already made. Chapter 5, Aftermath. The investigation took 4 months. 4 months of Maya living in a state of suspended tension, waiting for the knock on her door that would signal either rescue or retaliation. Victoria Hennessy called her twice in the first week, her voice honey-smooth and patient, asking if Maya had made her decision. Maya had followed James's script perfectly, expressed interest, cited concerns about timing, asked for more information about how the strategic advantage trading actually worked in practice. Victoria had been accommodating, even warm, promising to send additional materials, to arrange a private meeting where Maya's questions could be answered more thoroughly. The materials never came. The private meeting never happened. After that second call, there was only silence, which somehow felt worse than pressure. Maya went to work every day, analyzed her spreadsheets, attended her meetings, and pretended that everything was normal. But she'd started noticing things she might have missed before. The way certain colleagues took calls in stairwells. The way information sometimes moved through the office in patterns that didn't quite make sense. She found herself wondering who else might be part of networks like the Laureate Society, how many invisible webs connected people she thought she knew. James had been right about the contingencies. 2 weeks after their meeting at the diner, he'd called her at 6 in the morning to warn her that someone had filed a complaint with her company's ethics board, alleging that she'd accepted inappropriate gifts from a client. It was fabricated, easily disproven, but it served its purpose, a warning shot, a reminder that they were watching, that they could damage her whenever they chose. The complaint was dismissed after 3 days of investigation, but Maya felt the shift in how people looked at her. The suspicion that never quite went away, even after vindication. Mud, once thrown, left stains. She'd also started noticing the car. A black sedan, different drivers, but always parked within view of her apartment building or lingering near her office. Never close enough to be obviously threatening, but present enough to be felt. James had assigned her a handler, a young agent named Keisha Okonkwo, who checked in twice a week and told her, repeatedly, that she was safe, that they were watching too, that the investigation was progressing. But Maya didn't feel safe. She felt like a piece on a board game whose rules she didn't fully understand, moved by players she couldn't see. The break came from an unexpected direction. Dr. Patricia Voss, the surgeon who'd been at that first gathering, had apparently kept attending meetings, signing the membership agreement Maya had refused. But something had gone wrong. A trade she'd made based on information from the Laureate Society had been too obvious, too profitable, too perfectly timed with a pharmaceutical company's drug approval announcement. The SEC had flagged it. And when investigators had started asking questions, Dr. Voss had panicked. She'd come forward. Offered testimony in exchange for immunity. Provided the prosecution with documentation, recordings, names, everything the government needed to build a case that couldn't be dismissed or negotiated away. James had called Maya on a Wednesday evening in late March, his voice carrying a cautious triumph. "We're moving tomorrow morning. Simultaneous raids on homes and offices. We've got warrants for 17 people, including Victoria Hennessy and Richard Crane. It's over, Maya. You did this. You stopped them." But when the raids happened, when the news broke and Maya watched the footage of people being led from expensive buildings in handcuffs, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt exhausted. Hollowed out. Because James had been wrong about one thing, it wasn't over. Not really. The trial took 8 months. Maya testified twice, answering questions from prosecutors who treated her like a hero and defense attorneys who implied she'd been a willing participant right up until the moment she'd gotten cold feet. She watched Victoria Hennessy sit in the defendant's box looking smaller than she had in that penthouse, her practiced smile replaced with something harder and more desperate. She watched Richard Crane maintain his composure even as the evidence mounted, as if he genuinely believed that the right connections might still save him. In the end, 11 of the 17 defendants were convicted. Victoria Hennessy received 7 years. Richard Crane received 12. Dr. Patricia Voss, despite her testimony, received 3 years, the judge noting that cooperation didn't erase culpability. The others scattered across the spectrum of plea deals and acquittals, some destroyed and some merely inconvenienced by the process. But Maya knew the truth that the news coverage missed. The Laureate Society had been one network in one city. There were others. There had to be. Victoria herself had said it during her testimony, a moment of defiant honesty when asked if she felt remorse. "We weren't unique," she'd said, looking directly at the jury. "We were just unlucky enough to get caught. This is how the system actually works. We were just honest about it." The statement had probably hurt her case, but Maya suspected it was true. 6 months after the trial ended, Maya left her job at the consulting firm. The vindication she'd expected never materialized. Instead, there were whispers. Questions about her judgment in attending that first meeting at all. Suggestions that maybe she'd been more involved than she'd admitted, that the prosecution had given her a pass because they'd needed her testimony. Her work became scrutinized in ways it hadn't been before, every decision questioned, every conclusion challenged. She found new employment eventually, at a smaller firm that specialized in nonprofit compliance. Less prestigious, lower salary, but cleaner somehow. The kind of work where the corruption, when it existed, was smaller scale and more desperate than calculated. She could live with that. Maya still walked past the Ashford building sometimes, on her way to other places. The penthouse lights were usually dark now. The building's reputation had been damaged by the scandal, property values dropping, residents leaving for addresses that carried less baggage. She'd heard that Victoria Hennessy's penthouse had been sold at auction, bought by a cryptocurrency entrepreneur who'd made a fortune in decentralized finance and probably didn't see the irony. On a cold evening in November, almost exactly 2 years after she'd received that cream-colored envelope, Maya stood across the street from the building and looked up at those dark windows 43 floors above the street. She thought about the choice she'd made, sitting in that diner with her phone in her hand. She thought about Dr. Patricia Voss, who'd made a different choice and was serving time in a federal facility in Pennsylvania. She thought about all the people who'd attended Laureate Society meetings she'd never witnessed, who'd signed agreements she'd never seen, whose names had never made it into James Rodriguez's investigation. The system was still broken. She knew that. Stopping one network hadn't fixed the underlying architecture that made such networks possible, profitable, protected. Somewhere in the city, right now, another group of accomplished professionals were probably gathering in another expensive penthouse, making another set of calculations about what they deserved and how they could claim it. But she'd stopped one. She'd drawn one line and held it. In a world where lines kept moving, kept being redrawn and erased and relocated to serve whoever had the power to move them, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could do: hold the line you were given, defend the space you occupied, refuse to be moved when the pressure came. Maya turned away from the building and started walking home. The city flowed around her, millions of people making millions of small choices that added up to something larger than any individual could fully comprehend. Some of those choices were corrupt. Some were heroic. Most fell somewhere in between, in that vast gray space where people did their best with incomplete information and competing pressures. She didn't know if she'd made the right choice. She knew it was the choice she could live with. And in the end, perhaps that was the only measure that mattered, not whether you'd won or fixed everything or changed the system, but whether you could still recognize yourself when you looked in the mirror. Whether you'd stayed who you meant to be, even when the cost of that constancy was higher than you'd wanted to pay. The invitation had called it a private club. They'd said it was an opportunity, a recognition of her accomplishments, access to advantages she deserved. But Maya understood now what it had really been, a test. Not of her qualifications or her intelligence or her worthiness for inclusion. A test of whether she understood that some doors, no matter how beautifully they're presented, lead to rooms you can't escape from. Some invitations, no matter how exclusive, are really just cells with better lighting. She'd passed the test by walking away. And though it had cost her more than she'd imagined, though the city still held dark penthouses where other invitations were being extended to other carefully selected professionals, she'd kept something more valuable than access or advantage or the hollow promise of protection. She'd kept herself. The thought stayed with her as she walked through the November darkness, past lit windows and closed doors, past all the secret spaces where the city's real business was conducted. Somewhere above her, in towers she couldn't see, deals were being made that would never appear in contracts. Promises were being exchanged that would never be written down. Systems were being circumvented by people who believed the rules had never applied to them in the first place. But not by her. Not tonight. Not ever, if she could help it. Maya Castellano walked home through the city she tried, in her small way, to make slightly more honest. And if the victory was incomplete, if the work was never finished, if the darkness still held more secrets than she could ever expose, well, that was the nature of the fight. You did what you could. You held your line. You remained, against all pressure, yourself. It would have to be enough.